Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. You know, there are plenty of different ways to light a fire. One of the most conventional ways that most people are familiar with is using a lighter. Unfortunately, a lighter is going to run out. You can also use matches. As great as matches are, especially these Titan storm-proof matches, which will even light underwater and under snow, fortunately, they're going to run out too. Now, if you're 1800 prospector style, you can use a Flint and Steel, but who the hell wants to do that? You could also use the one and done method of using a survival emergency flare. You could also make your life a little bit easier while staying primitive and use this ferrocerium rod plus magnesium striker, or if you're a bit more hardcore, you can just use the ferrocerium rod and go bareback style. One of the most modern of fire ignition creations are these arc lighters, which we're going to demonstrate today, that basically allow you to create a fire just using electricity. Unfortunately, even these fancy boy lighters are eventually going to run out of recharge cycles. Now, one thing you could do is use the tried and true Fresnel lens. Everyone takes this for granted. Using nothing more than the power of the sun, you can virtually light an infinite amount of fires. And if this thing runs out of fuel, then I guess we're all pretty screwed anyways. Today we're going to demonstrate exactly how you can light a fire with a Fresnel lens. Now, it's not quite as simple as you think, and there's some important things to keep in mind if you are trying to do this. If you don't care to make it through the rest of this video, one thing I would recommend putting in your fire kit is this pocket bellows. These two things go together like bread and butter. So guys, let's go and check it out. Now, the sun can be used for a variety of different things. We've shown you on this channel how it can be used for cooking, for example, with this parabolic mirror setup that we have here. We've also demonstrated numerous ways that you can harness the sun's energy to create electricity, but also using this simple thing which weighs almost nothing and fits in your wallet can generate an infinite amount of fires so long as the sun is shining. Now, the trick with a Fresnel lens is that it concentrates the sun's light into a focal point. This is a beam of light which is just generated by a flashlight. You can see that one point where the lines converge. That's the point in which the light is most concentrated and effectively hottest. And if you were to put any material within that concentrated light, it is going to ignite. And that is exactly what we are trying to do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to instantly burst into flames. Now, I personally attempted to start a fire with a Fresnel lens for the first time, believe it or not, and I was surprised at how challenging it actually was. So here are some recommendations we have so that if you have to rely on one of these very simple and cost-effective tools in a survival situation, that you don't have to mess around. And guys, remember, if you enjoy this video, give it a big thumbs up because we make these mistakes so you don't have to. So on the first day, guys, the communist cameraman, he went out back and he tried playing around with the Fresnel lens, couldn't get a fire going. Then of course I, the prepping expert, went back there and showed him how it's done because we all know I'll survive a lot longer than he will after it hits the fan. So here's what we did to start. I know full well that darker materials are what is going to be required. So darker materials are going to ignite better than brighter materials because white reflects light, black absorbs light. I learned this from my experiments using parabolic solar cookers. So don't use a white wood shavings or even white paper because you're going to be scratching your head wondering why it's not working. If you're going to use something, use a darker type of matter like a dark dead grass, or even the inner parts of this bark as shown here, which is kind of a burgundy color, but anything darker the better. This is why char cloth works so well. Other darker materials would be things like dryer lint. A lot of people use that, or newspaper, which some of the print on it is black, and that will catch the sun's rays very well. The next thing you need is a tinder bundle at the ready so that you can put your ember inside that tinder bundle or just focus the Fresnel light on the tinder bundle itself. Now, one of the things that we noticed when we were focusing that light trying to get that ember is that it just wasn't igniting enough. It wasn't spreading fast enough. So then we decided to start blowing on it, giving that fire some oxygen. Unfortunately, that caused a lot of kickback in our face of hot embers, which of course the natural reaction is to pull back. So then we decided, hey, let's try a pocket bellows. A pocket bellows is just a telescoping piece of metal, much like an antenna, which you use it in a reverse manner so it concentrates the oxygen and focuses it into the fire. And this is where we started to see some success. Once we started using the pocket bellows in conjunction with the Fresnel lens, that's when we started seeing some progress. But there were still some sticking points. We repeatedly had to clean the Fresnel lens because of course it's going to collect a bit of that ash, it's going to collect dust, so you got to make sure that you keep it clean and keep it protected, because if it gets all scratched up, it's going to limit the ability to concentrate the sun's light, and it's going to make it more frustrating for you when you're out there in the field. Another thing that we should have done but didn't is to mount the actual Fresnel lens on a tripod simply by using a stick. This would have helped stabilize that so we could actually just work on the ember and keep that focal point exactly where it needs to be. It does help to know exactly how far the focal point is going to be from your Fresnel lens. It's going to be the same distance all the time, no matter what light you're using with it. So as you do this method more and more, you're going to just have a natural sense of where you should be focusing that. Ideally, you'd be doing this at midday when the sun is highest in the sky. Unfortunately, at the latitudes that we're at, it's not always going to be a luxury here in winter in particular. It's another thing to keep in mind. This method probably won't work as well in winter, because the hotter it is, the better it is going to work. So the big takeaways from what we learned is that you definitely need darker type material, something to create a nice ember and something that's not going to burn too much. You don't want to use this with what they call flash tinders. So things like cattail, for instance, cattail fluff, it's going to burn too fast. It's not going to burn long enough in order to become a nice ember that you can then transfer to your tinder bundle. So you need to have some concentrated organic material. Bark, I think, works very well. Any sort of scrapings, any char cloth, and then make sure you are using oxygen in conjunction with the light. So a fire needs three things. It needs ignition, it needs a fuel source, and it needs oxygen. So as long as you have those three things, you can effectively get a fire going. But it's going to require patience. So I would strongly encourage you, if you do try this method, don't give up, don't be discouraged. It can be done, and it will be done if you just keep trying. So there is another way to light fires, and actually about 6 years ago, I did a video on the plasmatic arc lighter. And arc lighters are pretty innovative because I was always looking for a way to have an infinite source of fuel. And what better infinite source of fuel than the sun? So if you don't have the sun at your disposal, perhaps it's an overcast day, but you want to use stored sunlight in the form of electricity from your solar panel into what's called an arc lighter. So this creates an arc of electricity between a few electrodes. You can see it there, it gets really, really hot. If you were to touch this, it's a lot like getting tased, only on a much smaller scale, but it doesn't feel good. You can feel it throughout your whole body. And one of the advantages of this, obviously, is that you could recharge this by the sun. You can't recharge your lighter out there in the wilderness. You can't recharge your Zippo. And it works in even really windy conditions, which is beneficial, especially if you like smoking that stuff that the communist cameraman likes smoking. This one is cool because it comes in a waterproof case, and it even has a flashlight on the bottom, so it's multi-purpose. When these things first came out, they were kind of gimmicky, but somebody picked up on the utility for emergency preparedness, and they went with it. Now, there are obvious drawbacks to this. It's technology. It could potentially someday just stop working. This is a far cry from the Flint and Steel method, but it's a lot easier. This thing right here has about 300 recharge cycles. You're going to get about 90 fire ignitions per use. So we're talking about 30,000 potential fires from one lighter. And after that 300 uses, the battery will only hold 80% of its original charge. So it's not going to completely stop working. So you're talking about 30 to 40,000 potential fires. All right, guys, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave it down below. And if you have any suggestions on how we can improve this Fresnel fire starting method and make it easier and more approachable to the average person, that would be great. We really want to hear it. Also, go get yourself a tackable lighter from CanadianPreparedness.com. As for the Fresnel lens, you can pretty much get them anywhere. We do sell them at Canadian Preparedness, so you can get them there as well, but you might even be able to find them cheaper elsewhere. So thanks for watching, guys. Canadian Prepper out.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.